On yesterday's Twitch stream for Wizards of the Coast previewing cards for Murders at Karlov Manor, they dropped a bit of a bombshell about Shocklands, and it's something players need to be aware of as we have Ravnica Remastered coming up. So stick around for today's video, we have a lot to talk about. Wizards of the Coast is making sure that you can scratch that itch to get those Shocklands because they are going to be readily available. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me on my channel today as we discuss what's happening with Shocklands and the amount of reprints we've been seeing with this product line. About 2 months ago, I did a video discussing the massive amount of reprints we've been seeing and the fact that people were really selling off a lot of their cards, including Shocklands, with the upcoming Ravnica Remastered, because that's one of the bigger cards you'd be able to get inside those boxes, the retro frames. Of course, it was coming at a premium price, and they had printed it just a year before in Infinity, where we got kind of like the Space Shocklands, okay? That was kind of the whole deal and the whole discussion. But now that we are getting closer to Ravnica Remastered, they gave us the kind of spoiler teaser season on the Twitch stream for Wizards about the Murders at Karlov Manor, and they threw kind of an interesting, shocking thing into the mix, and that's what we've got to discuss today, because this is something that Wizards of the Coast is actually play testing out to see how players react to this. So let's dive in. First thing I want to show you guys is, of course, Steam Vents. Shockland, great card. But Shocklands have had a whole bunch of reprints, as we've just discussed. They've showed up in all the guilds of Ravnica, Ravnica Allegiance, we've had Secret Layers, and of course, Infinity. There's been a lot of this available in the market space already, and with the announcement of Ravnica Remastered, we saw the price start to plummet. I mean, the cards flirted over $20, but it's having a hard time finding a sticking point when they reprint it every couple of years, so of course the price is going to slide as players lose confidence that the card is worth that pricing point. They're expecting it to fall, so of course they dump their cards onto the market, and the card starts to fall. So what's going to change that is going to make this even more difficult? Well, it's going to be this, and that is another Steam Vent. Of course, I'm showing you the same image. This is from the new Clue edition for Ravnica. Now, this is kind of interesting to see what's going on. The Clue game is coming up in the Murders at Karlov Manor. They did kind of, they announced that earlier. We kind of knew it was coming, but this was something that was a little more unusual. Now, currently, if you wanted to buy Clue, you could go on Amazon, you'd pay $16 and change to get a copy of Clue, but Wizards is making theirs a little bit more different, okay? What they've done is give you something special. This is Magic the Gathering Clue Edition, a 2 to 4 player murder mystery game. Includes 8 ready-to-play boosters, 21 evidence cards, 1 foil Shockland, and detective game accessories. Now, this game is going to retail for $70. So if I just showed you a game for 16 bucks, and now a game for $70, you can see they've marked it up quite a bit because it's not exactly the same as the original Clue game, is it? This is not the same animal at all. So what is going to happen when you have this game out there and players see the original Clue for 16, 17 bucks? There will be comparisons strictly based on the name that players will automatically feel like they're being ripped off. But understand, even I looking at it will recognize it's not the same thing. It has the same name, but that's about it. The idea and the premise behind the game is the same, but you're playing a Magic game with all kinds of rules and stuff set aside to make this a unique game experience. And it is a test. There's no doubt about it. Wizards of the Coast is seeing if players who enjoy Magic can cross over to board games if it's been reshipped, repackaged, and retooled as some kind of Magic event game where you can play with a group of friends. That in itself is already pretty cool. It's a good concept idea. Although I think the price is mismatched, like a lot of players will, they've added in that foil Shockland, and that is where I find myself in a bit of a conundrum as a player looking at it. It seems like it's a little bait release. You sit there and you go, I really don't want to spend 70 bucks on this, but there's a unique Magic card in there that's full art. It is a card I'm going to play with, and I kind of want to get it because that artwork is totally awesome. That's where a lot of players also will find themselves. But because of them adding it into every Clue game, and depending on how these games are shipped, sold, retailed, do you think players aren't going to rip into those boxes just to steal those magic pieces, those magic item cards that they want. I think if this is going to show up at a Walmart, it is going to be horrible. So I'm wondering how distribution will go, sure. But the price of that Shockland being in there is going to have a massive negative input. The price is going to go even further down on every other Shockland, which means anyone who's always desired Shocklands, remember them being $5 to $8, they're probably headed there again. They are going down and down because that Clue game isn't being made by just like 100 copies of it in the world. No, there's going to be tens of thousands. They're going to be shipped all over the place, which means there's a lot more Shocklands that will be available if you're willing to pay the price. And that's where I think people have to hold up for a second and recognize, although Shocklands are going to collapse in price, the market will determine it. It's going to say, oh, more Shocklands are coming. Everyone flooded the market. The price is going to be suppressed even further. How many people are going to buy that Clue game just to get the Shockland? There will be other ulterior motives. They're going to want to play the game, try it out, and that's just a little icing on the cake to make that player desire it. And there's also the tinfoil hat players out there. There's the other segment of players who I know I got your emails and the conversations that they believe Wizards of the Coast is draining the last of the equity. From things like fetch lands, remember Modern Horizons 2, fetch lands really haven't recovered. And we're waiting to see if we get the next fetch lands reprinted in, of course, Modern Horizons 3, which, of course, will bring those prices down. But to some players, they feel like Wizards of the Coast is draining the equity from these mana-based cards so they can move on to other cards. They can use Triomes or the Pathway cards, which, if you pay attention to them, if you've been looking, some of these Pathway cards are starting to drift up in value. Only nickels and dimes, but it's happened consistently week after week till the point where some of these cards are going to hit the $10 mark. They're not as good as Shocklands in my opinion. I mean, taking the 2 damage, but you do get both colors. Where something like a Pathway, that card, you got to pick your side. And in the case of a Triome, yes, 3 choices is amazing, but it comes into play tapped unless you use other mechanics that either let you unsummon the Pathways or untap those lands when they come into play. Yes, we all know there are ways of working around it, but some players believe that Wizards wants to steer into those mana bases and drain these out. Do I think it's going that way? No, I don't. I understand the argument. I can get behind the idea, but in my head, I think Wizards is actually using this as a little bit of a bait release kind of trap thing where they want you to buy it and they want to make it attractive enough. And the marketing team and everyone out there has said this is probably a good idea to put in there to just attract even a small base to try the game out. They may buy it for that Shockland, maybe, but they are going to try the game because they paid for it. And they'll get some friends together. And if that goes well, they may spread the word to other friends. And it's all because they put a little bit of marketing in there, which overall, yes, it's had tons of reprints, but the most recent ones are a little bit skimpy, aren't they? You're not getting 6 or 7 of these Shocklands inside Unfinity. And we're not going to see that in Ravnica Remastered because of the price point of these cards. So although, yes, it's going to add more to the market, it does mean more of the market is going to get opened. That's the interesting thing. I think we have to wait and see how the market will play this out, how popular the game is, and how well things turn out in the long run. Not just this little short-term blip, which prices will be forced down, and players now have the chance to grab some of these cards cheap and pick up maybe 1 or 2 of extra Shocklands they've been hoping in some new commander deck they're building. Fantastic and excellent. I wish they would show up in Standard again just so players could play with them and have a little bit of fun, but at the same time it looks like Wizards is reserving these, and that's why players feel the way they do. They're reserving them for other products, which means if they don't show up in Standard and don't get regular gameplay, it seems like that mana base is no longer being utilized. Now, just like fetch lands from Khans of Tarkir have not been in a standard rotation since 2014, players are starting to believe that maybe Shocklands are going to go that same route, and Wizards may give us a whole new mana base or rely on the Pathways and, of course, Triomes. It'll be very interesting to see this all unfold over time, and the whole conversation started off when they added a Clue Edition game that has a full art foil version of a Shockland included. Let me know what you guys think going forward on this type of product line. Does it interest you seeing that they're going to do a Clue Edition game that's kind of like a Magic standalone? Does the Shockland being in there entice you enough to buy it? Or are you panning on it and hating on it just for that fact that they added that kind of marketing gimmick to try to get you to buy it? I'll be curious to see and read your comments in the comment section. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. Shockland prices are going to fall. But will they fall long term? That is the next question. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for stopping by.